Hi guys, thanks for tuning in today. I wanted to do a quick little video to show how I would approach some editing for a group member's photos. Her name is Mina, and she has sent me some raw files, and she sent me some JPEG edits to show me what she did to the photos, and then I'm going to take them into Lightroom, do some corrective things to them, things that I would look for when I open them up in Lightroom, and I would also want to see if I can do anything stylistically that I can change to the photos. And this is subjective. Like it's not necessarily the right way to do it. It's just a way that I would do it. So I'm going to open up her photos here. I have a Lightroom catalog already open. I'm going to go in here into File and go to the Import window. And I'm going to look for her photos. I have them on my hard drive here. Mina edits. Here we go. And so I'm going to import her raw files and her JPEGs too, just so we have a basis of comparison. I think she did it to all her images here, but I'm going to import them now. All right, and the first thing I can do is I'm going to separate them by file extension. So now I think the first images will be the JPEGs. Nope, these are the NEF files. Let's see. Make my own collection for these images here, and we're in the library module right now. I'm going to go to new collection. I can hit Control N as well. Call this edits. I only want to use the selected photos, and I don't want to make virtual copies of them. I'm just going to work straight on these raw files. And so now I have a collection here. The collection is called edits, and I'm going to start with the first image. Go into the develop module. Right click it here. It's all baseline. There's no edits done to it yet. So in my own process, I use some Visco or VSCO presets, and they're a baseline for me. And some people, some people have asked me, is using presets cheating? I don't believe it is. My feeling about presets is that they are a baseline starting point. Like you can find one that you like and have it hone in a look, but it's never going to be a one-click solution to editing your images. It's rare when I click on the preset and immediately the photo is exactly how I want it. There's always something to be tweaked, and some of these presets I have a favorite one. I use their Fuji Astia 100F++ preset, but I have done some tweaks to it and removed the grain from it because all the Visco presets have a grain applied from the get-go. So I don't like adding grain to my images. I like a more smoother look to the images. So the grain's not my thing. Maybe if I was doing some stylistic black and whites, I could see a use for it. But for most of my work, I don't like to have the grain added. I can, I'm always trying to fight that and do a noise reduction. I do a little noise reduction to remove some of the noise that we get in the images, but I'm not one for adding grain to the images unless it really calls for it. So let's see. I'm going to approach this without using filters or using presets. I'm just going to go ahead and show you what I would do to this image right off the bat here. We can start with the white balance color selector, so we can pick. You want to look for a white or neutral gray area of the photo to see if we can get a more accurate white balance, corrective white balance, or maybe stylistic. I usually tend to err on the side of slightly warmer than neutral, but I'm going to click on neutral here and see on a neutral white here and see if we get a different white balance. And right off the bat, it's a little cooler than I would care for. I'll probably push the exposure up a little bit, see what we get. I don't think Mina would like to see it this cool either, so I'd probably bump this up to about 6,000 on the white balance here, and I think that's probably what it was, close to what she had set it to earlier. I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to get a better look at the photo. Might add a little contrast. In my own work, I don't tend to add a lot of contrast. Most of my contrast work is done here in the tone curves. We'll get to that here in a little bit. By default, I always tend to pull back on highlights just a little bit and bump shadows just a little bit. I'm going to add a little more exposure here. Bring it up to about a stop. Clarity, I don't advise playing with the clarity too much. Sometimes you can do a local adjustment on clarity and use it to soften skin a little bit. I'm not big on doing it to the entire image. If we slide the clarity down, it tends to lose some of that fidelity. If you bump it up too much, it can look a little too intense. I wouldn't do it to women. I like to use the clarity slider. I like to bump it up when I'm working with men's photos because I don't mind a more dramatic look with men. So it's kind of stylistically, I like to play with clarity only on men's portraits. So I'm gonna leave it at 0. It's just not my preference. Vibrance. I don't normally mess with vibrance on edit like this. You could bump it up a little bit and we'll push. I think it's used to push skin tones a little bit warmer, and I think greens get a little push from it as well. But I'm bumping it up. You can see what it's doing to her skin. Now she looks really orange. Not a fan of that look. And if you pull it down a little bit, it'll work skin tones first. We can pull some saturation out of it a little bit, only in the tones, skin tones. But normally I'll keep this at 0 on an edit like this. Saturation I never play with, and if you want to pull saturation thinking you're going to make a black and white, there's better ways to do it. So I wouldn't use saturation to make your black and whites. There's a whole window panel treatment for black and white images. Tone curve, this is where I like to play with things to kind of get a different look at the contrast and values of black and white. And so basically what happens here is if you mess with these points on the line, we can affect the values for bright and dark. So if we move over here on the left end of it is where we represent the true black colors all the way through the shadow range up to middle gray, and then to the far right is where we start affecting the brighter parts of the image. We can affect the values of the whitest point and the blackest point. And this is where we can do that matted stylistic edit that people like to do in pictures. I'm doing it now in my images. I'm a big fan of it, but you know, a few years from now it could be not as popular. So I'm going to give a little edit here. Let's see. Do that. Go down here and you click on this button right here. You go to I'm going to click on that to allow it to edit on a point curve, and now I can click here, raise. Well, you see that. Watch the blacks right now. Watch the darkest parts of the image. As I raise that up, you'll see how it's affecting the blackest parts of the image, and it's also raising all the other values in between, leading up to bright white. And so here's where I can bring up those black values a little bit, and then click over to the right of this line of that point a little bit more, click there, and then bring the rest of the line back down to where they were, so we have more normal values for the rest of the image. And this works on a Bezier curve, and so you have to be careful about how you affect the rest of the line. It wants to move the rest of the line accordingly to keep this curve going. So you can click another point and kind of bring back the rest of those values back above the baseline there. And so now with 3 points, you can see how it affected the blacks mostly, but not the rest of the tones. So I'm going to back off that a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is what we had earlier, and now I'm going to work my way back up through those tone curve adjustments. So now we have this slight matted look to the black values on her shadows, and I could probably end it there, but I also like to do it to the far end of the tone curve and bring down the white values a little bit. We don't really have much of a true white here, like a very bright white. The tone curve, the histogram is pretty even across the board without any bright highlights. As you see up here, we don't have any values represented here in the histogram that represent the whitest points of an image. So, but I'm going to bring this down a little bit, and you'll see later how it can affect another image where there's a true bright point on the image. So I'm going to add a little bit of a curve here. All right, so and what I'm doing here is I'm clicking and adding a new point and then dragging and adjusting. And my goal is to keep these middle values here closest to the baseline as possible. And you can see this dotted line going through here. And then I just want to bring down the whites a little bit. I want to bring up the blacks a little bit. So I'm going to do a before and after and click on this here, and you can see what it looked like before and after. That's the before, and then the after we raised the exposure, did a little contrast adjustment, messed with the highlights and shadows a little bit, and that's what I do as a baseline. Like I whether or not the image needs a little bit of shadow recovery or highlight recovery, it's easy for me to do that adjustment, and it doesn't affect the tones of an image drastically. So it's something that I could use as a preset and apply to a wide variety of images throughout a whole collection, just as a baseline. Like it gets me close. So some images will need a little bit of recovery in the highlights and shadows, and my adjustments here will give it a kind of a head start in getting you in the right direction. It'll get me closer than if I just left these at 0, because what I'm doing right now is I'm going to build a preset from these settings that I can apply to the next images. So I'm going to revert back to where we're at now, and let's see. I don't tend to mess with hue and saturation and luminance too much, but one neat little trick, my dad showed me this. If you click right here, we're in the hue panel, and you click here on this little dot right there, and you can roll over and find a value that you want to, a color value that you want to change or enhance. So like right now I can click on the green and click and hold and then push up on the mouse, and I can change the look of those greens and add a little more green to it if I like. This is totally stylistic. Like I don't, we're augmenting reality here. That's not how it really looked. So I'm gonna undo it so you can see it's a browner green, and if I apply that effect again, it's a more vivid green. And I like to do this to desert landscape because desert landscape tends to be on the brown and earthy side, and I like to have a little more of a vivid green. So I do play with that a little bit. And another cool thing you can do with it is when I go in here and I have this still selected, I can click on skin tones, and I'll show you a drastic edit here. I'll click on it and I'll push it up farther. You can make people's skin tones greener, yellower, or redder. And where this is handy is, let's say she did look like she was incredibly sunburned here. I could click on this on these redder skin tones and push it more yellow and return it to a more natural looking skin tone. So this is very helpful for drunk uncles at destination weddings who drink too much or go golfing in the morning and show up to the wedding really, really red. So I can fix lobster claw skin colors, no problem with use these the hue and the hue slider here. So using this tool here, clicking on that, and then clicking on the value, holding, and then pushing up or down on the mouse will get you to a more natural skin tone. You can correct red skin tones, but you have to be careful because sometimes you might correct somebody's skin tone in a group photo, and you'll push someone's skin tones who were more normal to a more yellow place. So you have to use it very selectively, because it's okay in like one-on-one portraits, but if you have a group photo and only one person is really sunburned and you correct their skin tones, you're going to push everyone else's skin tones the other direction too. So more yellow. So I'm going to undo that because I thought her skin looked fine. All right, split toning. This is where you can get really stylistically wonky. Like and this is like a cinema type skin tone adjustment. I'm about to do split tone adjustment, and for example, I could push up to like 60 is a value I've done a lot, and that's where we're at a more yellow highlight value, and I'll push the saturation up for it and watch the image as it starts to turn more yellow. Now she looks jaundiced, but we'll pull back on a little bit, and this is where you can really get creative with using tones. This is like low grade color grading that they would do in cinema. In cinema, they might do yellow in the highlights and blue in the shadows, and this is like a cinematic color grade that they would do because they are complementary colors to each other, yellow and blue. Let's see, I'm not a fan of it in this image. There's already enough blue going on, but that's just an example of something you can do with split toning to add a stylistic color edit to your images. I can then go and turn this into a preset and apply to other images, and some images will take to it better than other images, but I'm going to undo it. I'm not wanting to play with split toning. I don't do it often. It's not something I like to do to all my images. I have seen photographers though who do like that look, and they apply it to their entire images, and I see like a really warm golden hour type yellow haze to all their images. And I don't really like to do that, but that's, some people have that style. Sharpening. I'm going to zoom in again so you can see the effects of the sharpening. I'm going to push the sharpening up a little bit, and the image baseline. The baseline for the image was underexposed, about a one stop, at ISO 640, and I'm not sure what camera she's shooting with here. Let me check the metadata real quick. She was shooting with a Nikon D700, so not the most current cameras where shooting at low ISO or higher ISO retains a lot of sharpness. So you can see at ISO 640, pushing it a stop up, we got some grain here. We got some grain here in the image here. So I'm going to, when I bump sharpness up, it also will make the noise more noticeable. So I'm going to push it up a little bit and see how it looks. And you can see as I push that sharpness, I'm going to do it all the way up. You can see how we accent the noise. So I think I can go like around 50 here, and I'm going to move the noise reduction up a little bit. And these two are they work against each other. If you raise the amount of sharpening, you're going to make the noise more noticeable, and if you raise the noise reduction, you will lose sharpness. So it's negligible that I'm doing any improvements by improving the sharpness and then actually doing the noise reduction, but I guess I've always done it this way. Maybe it's like a placebo effect in my head where like, okay, I'm making it sharper and then I'm reducing the noise a little bit. So I'm raising the noise reduction a little bit, and let's see, I'm going to undo redo. Yeah, I mean, I can live with that noise. We're not looking at these images at 100% zoom. We're going to look at it something more like that. And the discernible sharpness and graininess is like acceptable. I don't look at this image and think of it as a noisy image, and I don't look at it and think like it's not sharp. From this viewing distance at this size, it looks fine. If I look at it how I would look at it on the web, you can't discern any noise or lack of sharpness. So don't rack your brain and obsess over sharpness and noise reduction too much. If your images are being presented no larger than 8 by 10 or on the web only, most of your viewers aren't going to see that noisiness and sharpness unless they zoom in 100% if you provided files that big. So we probably obsess over sharpening and noise reduction more than we should. When we're looking at an image at this viewing distance, it looks fine. So scroll down a little bit more. And I only ever really mess with the amount on the sharpening and the luminance on the noise reduction. Sometimes I'll add a little color noise reduction in here and I'll push this number up, but it's rare that I mess with that. I can see very quickly the results of the sharpening and noise reduction just by looking at the image at 100%, and it's fine. The image is a little soft. Her shutter speed 1/400th of a second. Her lens may have front focused a little bit or back focused. It's not 100% sharp, but it's sharp enough when we look at it here. So that's not an image you would have to throw away. It's definitely something you could work with. Let's see here. I don't mess with lens corrections at this point. The image isn't heavily vignetted, so I don't need to correct that. But here's where we would do it. Some people like to add a vignette to bring a little bit of attention to the center point of the image. I don't mess with lens vignetting. If I'm going to add that vignette effect, I always use post-crop vignetting. And what that does is it adds that same vignette, but if I crop the image, it'll now adjust the vignette for that crop. So if you see here, there's it readjusts for your or whatever you crop. So if you're going to use vignetting, if you're going to fix a vignette, if you're going to fix a vignette, then use this. But if you're going to add a vignette, use post-crop vignetting. So I'm going to undo my crop, and I'm going to undo that post-crop vignette. I don't really like to go too far into that. And too much. All right, let's see. Okay, so grain. This is where you could add grain. I'm not, like I said, I'm not big on adding grain, but that's something you can do if you're really into it. I don't do that. Dehaze, that would be if we were like if we had a heavily backlit image where the sun was poking through and changing the values of the tones a lot. We could mess with the dehaze to make a more discernible quality to the image. Like you would gain back some detail lost by the blown out look of a hazy image. All right, let's see here. Camera calibration. I don't play with these too much, but if you want to mess with any of these, here's a little trick. You can play with blue primary and push it forward, push it up to get a saturation boost to the image, and it helps skin tones and it can add a little more vibrance to the image. And so that's something I could live with right here, playing with blue primary. And I've pushed it all the way to 100 sometimes even, but that's too saturated for me. So maybe like 50 is not a bad look. So you can see the difference between 50 and 0. And you have to be careful if you do a preset like this and you apply it to a bunch of images. And I've had this happen where I did it to all my photos in a wedding, and I got to the reception. And once I got to the reception, there was a lot of like blue neon lights and stuff, and it affected all my images where they were like overly blue saturated. So you have to be careful when you do this. Outdoor images benefit from it better than like nighttime reception lit images. And so I'm going to leave it like plus 30. So now I have a finished image. I'm going to undo, redo. You can see what it looked like before and what it looks like now. I might even go a little warmer on the white balance just for a little bit of warmth. And I think I want to push our exposure up just a little bit more. All right, and so I'm going to go to presets and click the plus button and make a new preset for this. We'll call it Mina Edit. And I'm going to not accept the white balance because white balance can change from photo to photo. So I'm going to unclick the white balance. We don't want the white balance from this photo to be a part of our preset. We don't want the exposure either because that's going to be a relative adjustment that we're going to react to and do on our own when we see the next photo. Contrast, I'm okay with keeping. Highlights and shadows are fine. White clipping and black clipping we can play with, but we can accept in this preset. But we didn't do anything, so I may as well uncheck them. They don't have to be a part of this preset. The tone curve was a big deal, so we want to keep the tone curve. We didn't do anything to clarity, so I can uncheck that. We did do a baseline sharpening, which I would like to keep. Our color treatment, and that's where we affected those green values. I want to keep that color treatment. Saturation and vibrance and color adjustments. I'm sorry, that's where we made those adjustments to that green color. That would come in here with the color adjustments. We didn't do anything to vibrance and saturation, so I will uncheck those. We didn't do anything to split toning. We don't want to preset our local adjustments where we do like graduated and radial filters, so we'll leave that there. Noise reduction, we did some things too, so we'll keep that. We didn't do any lens corrections, and we did do a little post-crop vignette. We didn't do anything to grain or dehaze, but I'll keep that little bit of post-crop vignette. Process version and calibration we'll keep. And so I'm going to hit create. And so now we have a preset called Mina Edit. And I'm going to go to the next picture. And I'm going to move a little quicker now that we've gotten to this point because I can use that baseline preset that I created. So I'm going to go to the next photo and add the Mina Edit preset. And right away we see what it does. We're pretty close here. I might pull back on highlights a little bit just to bring some of that hair down because it's really glowing, and there is some highlight data to recover. I would push the exposure up a little bit, and this might be a photo where we can play with dehaze. So I'm going to try it out to see what it does. If you go left, it adds haze. If you go right, it reduces haze, but it also adds a little bit of contrast. So let's see, there's plus 25 on the dehaze, undo, redo. So you see how hazy it is in the background, and then adding a little dehaze, remove some of it. So I'm going to see if I can push. And because it's backlit and the main light source is coming from the left, with the direction of the sun, and her face is technically in the shadows. I want to push her face up a little bit more and bring down that hair just a little bit too in the highlights. So that's what I'm looking at. I might add a little more contrast here. I feel like she's a little too bright now. Bring that down just a little bit. And maybe she's a little hot. She's a little too goldeny warm, so I might bring her white balance down a little bit. And I would do a crop adjustment here and change that angle. I want to get some vertical lines going with that building in the background, so I'm going to correct our perspective. And I might crop in a little bit. I'm not a big fan of cropping, but sometimes it can help an image. I'd rather have a little less weight on the bottom of the image and have her closer to the bottom of the frame. So that's my adjustment for this image. Let's see where it came from. That's what it was. That's where it's at. Next image. Click on our Mina edit preset. See, undo, redo, and that's pretty close right there. I might warm her up a little bit here, just for a look. I might push her exposure up just a little more. Bring down our highlights a little bit because we kind of blew out some of the whites. Add a little contrast. Now I want to bring that exposure. And it's so touch and go. Like, I have no real rhyme or reason sometimes for the editing. I just see it and I'm like, well, I'm going to push this, and when I push that value up, I need to bring down this value next because the exposure will affect my perception of it. And so with a little bit of tweaking, I can get there in a few steps. And so you saw like the first image took us a little bit to build that preset and get to a look that I wanted. But once I got that look and I could apply it to the next images, where our edits are a lot quicker now because I'm working off of that baseline preset. So undo, redo. I'm good with that image. There's a slight vignette. She's well exposed. We have a nice white balance on her. I'm going to move to the next image. I think we're done. And this is how quickly I like to move through these pictures quickly once I find a good baseline. And I have default presets that I apply to my images, and I'm then quickly getting to a point where I'm just editing correctively and trying to fix things that I want to correct. So right now, if there was more room to crop, I might fix that horizon line, but I think stylistically it works okay. Had there not been this other person in the background, I wouldn't have noticed the angled horizon line so much. So I mean, if I were to correct for horizon, I would turn the crop this way, and now you see we have a different image here. I don't know if that necessarily makes the image better. It just corrects the horizon in the background. Stylistically, sometimes people like to shoot at a slanted angle. They call it shooting Dutch, which was like a thing in Dutch art, maybe in like the 1800s. It's a thing though, the Dutch angle. You can look it up on Wikipedia. But I don't know if it really improves the image for me to correct the horizon line. So if I undo it and go back to what it was, that doesn't bother me really, other than I can see it looks like that person in the background sitting on a slanted hill. All right, so next picture. So Mina told me that this image gave her a little bit of stress because the graduate told her that she liked the photo from her own phone better than she liked this photo after her edit. And I don't know why she said that. I think it still has potential to be a great image. So I'm going to do that Mina edit preset. And this might be one where I'd want to fix that horizon line. But she's standing so close to the crop that I don't think I can do that, correct that horizon line without cutting off her feet. Maybe I can. It's close. That's not bad right there. I could live with that. And now I'm going to have to, we did our Mina edit preset. I have to bump the exposure up. And this is the bane of shooting with any digital camera, is that when we bump our exposure up to correct for our subject's skin exposure, we also consequently push up the entire exposure around her. So the values are fine for our subject, but our background has now become hazy and kind of blown out. And this is where we can do a highlight adjustment, pull back on that slider and try to pull back some of that value. And I wouldn't even mind going to 100 here to pull minus 100 to pull back on those highlights. And when we do that though, we tend to gosh. And I bumped her up almost 2 stops here. And so you can see, since we're at ISO 640, we really started to push that noise up. So this might be an image that's a little harder to recover. I'm going to do some things that are corrective, but also trying to like stylistically live in a happy medium where I'm okay with the amount of noise and I'm okay with the lack of exposure. Because if I push exposure too much, we're gonna make it too noisy. And this is where it can be hard to shoot in backlit conditions. You know, I like catch lights in the eyes, and when you shoot in the shadow side of an image, you with your subjects, you don't get catch lights in the eyes. Um, Maybe this is a photo where we could have turned our back to the sun and had her fully lit, and she could have done a pose where she wasn't looking toward camera. Maybe she's looking down at the ground or looking upward or doing something a little more artistic, modelly per se. And so that might be a picture where a little bit of different posing could have gotten a different result, and we could have had a better exposure on her. So let's see. I'm gonna zoom back in. I don't really need this image to be sharp. I'm going to pull that down a little bit. I'm going to push our noise reduction up. And I can live with that at 100% zoom. I can live with this amount of noise and lack of fidelity from the noise reduction reducing sharpness. I can live with that because we're going to look at that image like this. Let's see. What else could we do to this image? We're kind of close. I might do a radial adjustment where we bring the radial filter up over here. And I'll make a radial adjustment around her. You see I'm clicking and dragging around her. It's feathered a little bit, and I'm now going to bring down exposure just a little bit. And the radial filter now has a cool tool you can click on, and this is on CC on the most recent update. I think 6 has it as well. Click on brush right here and go to erase, and I can now zoom in and erase where that radial filter is starting to encroach upon her inside the circle. So I can go in here and erase. You can see it brought back a little bit of that value that was affecting her face. And so when I do this adjustment with the radial filter, right here you see its effect on the image. You can see where I erased on that mask. When I do that, that's just me trying to like pull off a conceivably darker exposure around our subject. I'm just trying to like pull off a little bit of trickery here. That of course is not how it looked, but it's me trying to work with the image. So I'm gonna remove it, and you can see what it looked like before and after. Before that radial adjustment, and then after. Like that's convincingly acceptable. And if you disagree, then I guess we have a opposition of a thought here on that. But I think it's conceivably acceptable. So, all right. So I think I can live with that. So maybe that's an edit that Mina could do that her student would like better. So before, after. All right, real quick, I got to get going here. Mina edit, and we're at 640 ISO. We're probably underexposed. A good stop. I'm going to push it up. Oh, maybe too bright. Bring it down a little bit. Bring the highlights down in the sky a little bit, and I might warm it up a little more. Touch. And that's fine right there. I think I'm good with that edit. Correct the horizon line and the vertical lines in the building. Live with that. Undo, redo. That'll work. And last image, Mina edit, preset, and you see now where those where that tone curve affects the whitest parts of the image. I'm going to undo, redo. It now kind of makes all of our white, the whitest points, the brightest points of the image, into like one tone. And you may not like that, but I kind of like it. I'm cool with that look, and I can bring down highlights a little bit more. And I might bring down the exposure a little bit, add a little bit of contrast, and here's where that dehaze slider comes into play. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. And now I'm starting to pull a little bit of redness in her skin, so I can come back up here to hue, click on this, click on the red part of her skin, push it up a little bit down. All right, so undo, see how red it is, redo, we corrected that skin a little bit. And correct. correct the horizon just a little bit with the crop. Might bring in a little tighter on her. Undo, redo, undo, redo. It's kind of yellowish. Maybe I'll push the tint a little magenta to 0. To cool her off a little bit. All right. And this, it's hard. I'm not a big fan of shooting backlit to the sun and having our subjects in the shade like this, but it's a look. And I guess I'll have to see how Mina approaches edits. So that's 5 edits right there, 6 edits. I'll go back to the library module. I'm going to go to all photographs, and we'll see what Mina did versus what I did. So here is my edit. Here is Mina's edit. And then here is my edit. And here is Mina's edit. I think it's a different photo, but it's close enough. She's leaning differently. So my edit, Mina's edit. She doesn't have it before and after on that image. I thought she had it before. And oh, she did. She's emailed to me. Crap. Let's see. My edit, her edit. Wait, yeah, her. No, my edit, and then her edit. See, I might even go back in here and bump that exposure up a little bit more now that I see her edit. So my edit, her edit. All right, and that's all I got for you guys. I will do another set of edits here later today. I just wanted to do these to just give you guys some perspective on what I'm looking for when I'm correcting images and what I'm doing to add style to an image. So that is all subjective. Everybody has a different way of doing it, but that's just the way that I could approach it. So if you liked what you saw here, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below the video. If you like what you saw here, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to do more stuff like this. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me. You can contact me at info@justinhaugen.com. My last name is spelled Haugen, and you can join our Facebook group. It's for Tucson local photographers. It's called TAPP with two P's. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll be doing it again soon. Have a good day.